You are listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I'm here with a very special guest all the way from the UK, Pauline Cox. Pauline's passion is spreading information that can change lives. As a scientist and research-driven woman, Pauline loves taking concepts and ideas and making them accessible to the general public. She has 2 bachelors of science and a master's in nutrition and public health. Pauline is an author, a speaker, and has written for a number of well-known newspapers and magazines in the UK. Plus, Best Holistic Life magazine, I just got to throw that in there. Her mission is to help people take control of their own health through knowledge and inspired action. Welcome to the show, Pauline. How are you?
I'm so well, Jana. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited to be here with you and talking to your audience.
I love it. I definitely want to, the very first thing before we get into all the goodness about you and what you're doing, we ask all of our guests to share their story of hope with us, because I personally believe our journeys are a gift, even though they don't seem like it always at the time.
Yes.
But when we share them with others, we're sharing those heartbeats that give them hope to keep moving forward. So do you want to share your story with us?
Yes, I'd love to. And thank you for giving me that opportunity, because absolutely, we all go through these difficult periods, and mine has been well documented actually, because it was what inspired me to write my book. So about 12 years ago now, I was working as a physical therapist. So I had a great deal of training at that time, and I was working with patients to help them improve their health. And yet behind closed doors, I myself was really struggling. I was struggling with anemia, polycystic ovarian syndrome, tired all the time. I was exhausted. I had resistant weight issues following the birth of my babies. I just felt like I was missing something. And I was trying to be healthy. I didn't drink alcohol. I was trying to eat lots of whole grains and all the foods I thought were the right foods for me. But I was getting worse. And I was getting increasingly tired and felt really bad about myself. I couldn't understand as a health professional why I couldn't make myself feel great. And that really compounded that poor relationship that was starting to develop with myself. So I started a new journey. I really started to read more around the field of nutrition, functional medicine, integrative medicine. I looked outside the box and started an entire new journey, which led me to a master's in nutrition. And it was through these steps of learning and recognizing where I hadn't been necessarily looking after my gut health, or my liver function might have been a bit sluggish, that my body just started to wake up again, and my anemia improved, my fatigue, my palpitations, which I was experiencing, my anxiety, my body composition changed. And all of these symptoms I've been suffering from for so long just started to slip away. And the further I got on this journey, the more I became inspired and felt like, why don't we know this information? More people should know this. So I stopped working as a physical therapist, and I did a big turnaround and started really pursuing the field of nutrition. I qualified with my master's, and I then opened a high street store called Sow and Arrow, which is an entirely gluten-free, low sugar, low carb store that makes its own specialty breads and quiches and cakes. And I wrote a book called Primal, Living in a Modern World. And that book did incredibly well. It became an award-winning book. And I've now secured a new publisher for my second book, which is coming out next year. So this story, this struggle really became my strength. And I now help thousands of other people, women particularly, but all sorts of individuals, to really find their best health through making lifestyle changes, dietary changes, and optimizing the different systems within the body, from the gut to the liver, to their blood sugar stability, to their adrenals, and all of which have a big impact on our mental well-being.
Wow, that story is exactly why we do this show and exactly the type of women we're talking to. I say women, I know there's a few of you men out there, but it's mostly women who listen to this show and they listen like they're loyal listeners. So thank you guys. But I want to really tap into what that looks like because I truly believe that nutrition, food, is meant to be medicine for our body. It's meant to be fuel. It's meant to heal, repair, give us energy, calm things, help things
Yes.
grow, like cellular growth. It's like so amazing. And when we start recognizing it that way, instead of just filling that hunger hole,
Yes.
it
Yes.
literally starts changing our lives. And I love that you kind of looked into what worked for you and what wasn't working for you, what you thought was healthy, because a lot of us are doing that. We're thinking like, this says healthy. This says it's healthy. My friend said this is healthy. And yet we eat it and we feel sick and we don't know why.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I love that you're
absolutely.
doing that. How did you make that connection?
It was really a form of self-experimentation. I found a wonderful book by an American doctor called Dr. Terry Wall, and her story truly inspired me, particularly as a physical therapist at the time. She was diagnosed with MS and had major impacts on the progression of the disease by looking at the nutritional needs of the cell and the subcellular structures. And as a scientist, I lapped this up. I thought, wow, this is incredible. Really understanding the importance of nutrition and seeing, as you've mentioned, food as medicine, and became thoroughly inspired. I traveled over to San Francisco to listen to her lectures at the Functional Medicine Symposium. And it really helped me understand how we just have these pillars, these fundamental pillars of health that we need to be looking at, really understanding and establishing. So the gut and then the liver, different types of fuel that we have. And if we upset our blood sugars too much, how that can have an impact on our insulin resistant state. So the ability of the cells to use certain fuels, it can cause, particularly if we get this insulin resistant state in the brain, it can cause brain fog, low mood, lack of memory, lack of clarity of thought. And as we start to reverse these conditions, it's almost like someone turns the light on and ramps up that sort of full color life again. And it's so transformative that it inspires me to really want other women to take control of their health, empower them with information and go, I can do this regardless of where I am at the moment. It's a step-by-step journey and I know I can get there.
I love that you were talking about this. We are so intuitive and we don't even realize how our body is constantly sending us message. So I'm going to use an example. When you're pregnant, you get cravings, right? Some women crave pickles. Some women will crave even as oddly as sucking on rocks or eating dirt.
Yes.
And there's a reason our body is telling us as we're growing this new life that we're depleted of something. And so it gives you this craving, right? So when you're craving, a lot of times people are like, well, I crave sugar. What's that for? Well, that isn't because your body needs it.
Yeah.
That's
but
like
telling you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's your body telling you. Often we are overfed but undernourished. And when we're craving sugar, it's the body saying, I need fuel. Because often the brain isn't getting the glucose because you get this insulin resistant state in the brain. And so the brain is saying, I'm hungry. And so you're kind of going for the sugar. But actually, as you start to improve your insulin sensitivity, as you start to change your gut health, the gut bacteria, the microbes have a big impact on our cravings. As we really start to look at each individual system and how they're interrelated, it has such a big impact on cravings, on energy levels, on sleep, on mental well-being, anxiety, and also how we feel about ourselves as well, which I'm hugely passionate about, how we improve the relationship with ourselves, that most important relationship.
Well, Pauline, one of the things we say here, and I think you're going to be able to really open the doors on this. One of the things I'm constantly saying on here is our gut is probably the most important brain we have. And I realize our brain helps us move and function, but our gut is literally sending messages out and fuel to our organs and, our bloodstream. It's our first line of defense for immunity. It's amazing what it does. And we don't think of it as a brain.
Oh my gosh.
How does that work? How do you see that working with the gut brain connection?
Yes. It's absolutely fascinating, this subject. I mean, as scientists, we understand some of it, but it's like this world still to be discovered. It's such an interesting idea. And the microbes play so many important roles. So you have these keystone microbes that can be either pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. You have these microbes that act like maintenance men. So our gut lining is almost like a fence, and the microbes are the maintenance men, keeping the integrity of the gut lining intact all the time. So again, if we don't have these key microbes to help with the maintenance, it can cause this leaky gut syndrome. The other thing that we're looking at with the gut is the diversity within the gut. And we want this really nice balance of good microbes that are very beneficial to us, microbes that help break down food, break down fiber. And when they break down fiber, we get these products called postbiotics, which are these beneficial compounds for us, the hosts of these microbes. And these postbiotics, for example, one of them is butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid that's produced when the bacteria break down fiber. And this butyrate crosses the blood, crosses through the gut into the blood, and it's also able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And what it does in the brain is it stimulates something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that's essentially miracle grow for the brain. And it really helps the brain. It nourishes the brain, helps to restore the brain if we've been through any inflammatory conditions or if there's any neuroinflammation there. And has a very beneficial impact on a part of our brain called the hippocampus, which is important for memory and recall. So the gut will directly produce these individual compounds that can cross into the brain and have this very beneficial impact on our mental well-being and the physical health of our brain.
Wow. That was so amazing, because literally we've made so many strides in the last couple of decades. It used to be the gut was literally a bag that held our food, right? Until it processed and started moving. So they didn't realize how powerful the gut and what was going on in the gut, how powerful that actually was to chronic illnesses, inflammation in the body, like all these things, like brain fog, like all these things that are happening. What are some things? Because I want everyone to have, like, I had to lose my stomach. I had to have a radical gastrectomy almost 11 years ago because I had my vagus nerve severed during a little off surgery and it didn't function anymore. And so losing my stomach was a huge thing for me to realize exactly how powerful that was.
Yes.
And so I want women to understand like their relationship with food and what that looks like and how changing that just a few things at a time and changing that, like removing sugar or removing gluten. And people think, you know, I don't have to remove gluten. I don't have a gluten sensitivity, but I know there's like, so like, let's just talk about that, since I know that you're a genius in this zone because I've looked at your website and all the stuff you're doing, but I really have tried to remove gluten almost completely, but they hide it in everything. Like I ate a piece of licorice and I couldn't understand why I felt so awful. And my sister's like, you know, there's gluten in that. It's licorice. There's no gluten in here. There is.
Yes. They add it. You're absolutely right. It's in condiments. It's in personal care products. They hide it in literally everything. It's one of the most used food additives in the world. So it's so important that we check, you know, our ingredients. However, the main place you'll find gluten is in wheat products, breads, bagels, crackers, cakes. So one thing, you know, people need to really recognize is you don't have to give up these products. It's just about finding empowering, healthy alternatives, because that's what really helps us stay on track. And I love finding healthy alternatives. So we're living in an age now where we can find the most incredible products: seed, psyllium husk-based, coconut flour-based, almond flour-based bagels and buns and cakes and crackers, rich in fiber, which is incredibly important, particularly, Jana, for us ladies, because fiber really helps keep our bowel health optimal. It really helps keep our hormones balanced, because if we have the excess estrogen and hormones that are destined for going down the pan and our bowel movements aren't flowing well, then that estrogen gets reabsorbed into the body and can really drive estrogen dominance. So fiber is incredibly important. And when you buy these grain-free alternatives, often they're super rich in fiber, which is incredible for our gut microbes because they feed on that, also our bowel health. So I'm not a fan of just replacing gluten wheat products with gluten-free products, because often they can read like, what, some sort of chemical lab. It's about finding those really whole food alternatives. And they are a bit more specialized, and they are often a little bit more expensive, because ingredients like almond flour and psyllium husk and sesame seed flour, they are more expensive. However, we're worth it. And it's always important to see food as medicine and food as an investment in your health. You will always get a return on the investment you make on your own health.
Well, some of the tips that I usually tell people who are listening when they're trying to figure out what works for their body and what doesn't is, this is going to sound really simple and kind of stupid, but I kept a food journal. When I was able to start introducing food to my body, I kept a food journal on how I felt after I ate it. So 30 minutes, the next morning, whatever, I knew what I ate. And if I didn't feel energized, if I didn't feel like amazing from the food, I was feeling sluggish or bloated, or sometimes I use this word all the time, I felt like it was poisoning me. I literally felt so bad that I felt like the food had poisoned me. And so I would keep a chart, and those foods, I removed them from my diet. And it turned out that I ended up being pretty much plant-based, removing sugar and gluten. And it's worked for me. I never have had more energy. I feel amazing. And I was losing my hair there for a point, because my body wasn't using the nutrients correctly. And now everything is doing really well. But it took me on my own personal journey of just writing down what I ate and being aware of how it made me feel.
Absolutely. And that's such a good strategy. And I always say, you know what, Jana, I think people get used to feeling terrible. They get used to just feeling sluggish and tired and a little anxious and maybe a bit irritable. And actually, when you remove gluten, I often say, do it for 60 days. Just see for 60 days solid, removing gluten, how you feel. And every time people come back to me and they say, wow, my shoulder pain's gone. And wow, I just have more energy. And that bloating that I experience has gone. And I just feel more energized. And as we just create these step-by-step procedures, just try eliminating gluten first. Now try adding in some sauerkraut and some fermented foods to start supporting your gut a bit more, really helping to recolonize your gut microbiome. These are the steps that really start to make the difference to people. And as you gain more energy and as you're sleeping better, it's so much easier to make better choices, because, when you're tired and you're irritable and you just know that sweet or that chocolate's going to make you feel better, it's very hard to resist, because we just want to feel good. And that short temporary burst of feeling good is often followed by not feeling so good, and then kind of beating yourself up for like, oh, I didn't want to eat that, why did I do that? So it's always this really nice step-by-step process, and seeing it as a journey, not seeing it as a short-term diet, but hey, I'm going to commit myself to 12 months. I'm going to see what I can achieve with my physical well-being, and really optimizing my health, and making commitment to seeing yourself through the next 12 months. And then from there on in, it just builds and builds.
Pauline, I don't know how it is in the UK, but here in the US, it's really hard for your doctor to send you to a nutritionist, right? So you go in to see your doctor, and they'll do a physical, and they say, oh, you're borderline diabetic, we're putting you on metformin. You have borderline hypertension, we're putting you on a statin. And they start prescribing drugs right away.
Yeah.
Why are we for me, the minute someone tells me I need a drug, I ask, can I see a nutritionist first? Can I work with them for 3 months and then redo my blood works? And if I still need the medication, 100%. But let's see how my body can work on its own, knowing there's a problem, focusing in on it with foods and nutrition. And can I change that on my own? I know that it was easy for me because I didn't have a stomach. So when I say nutritionist, they move me right onto them. But for most Americans anyways, when they tell their doctor, I want to get off my metformin, can I speak with a nutritionist and, redo my labs in 3 months and see if I can start weaning myself off this? Or I want to get off the statin drugs. By the way, for us in the US, statins and metformin as a chronic medication is two of the worst chronic medications your body can be on. And I'm grateful we have them for people who absolutely need them. But if you're borderline, have that conversation with your doctor. Ask them, Can I please try
Yes.
working with a nutritionist first? Give me 3 months to see what my body can do on its own with the proper nutrition. We don't teach nutrition in the US.
No.
We have that pyramid, stupid pyramid thing that keeps sticking out.
It's baffling, to be honest, Jana. I'm currently doing a new master's level in integrative medicine, which is essentially looking at the best of conventional and integrating it with what would be deemed alternative, which is crazy to consider nutritional therapy alternative, but we do. And really, the medical model is wrong. Fundamentally, it's wrong. We don't have a system where we look at the whole patient approach. We look at symptoms and managing those symptoms. And actually, you're absolutely right. Those symptoms, when we look at it from a detective perspective, we can track them back to, okay, let's improve your diet. Let's really look at your nutrition. What's going on with your magnesium levels? Let's look at how your sleep is and how your sleep's impacting your blood sugars. And, we can really look at that person holistically and understand their lifestyle, their diet, their physical activity, the stresses they're under, and use that information to make those changes within their life. But sadly, it is the same within the UK. We have health professionals, GPs, doctors, who are fairly constrained with time, resources, and knowledge in this area. Their speciality knowledge is in pharmaceuticals and treating symptoms. It's not in nutrition. And I think it really comes down to patients leading the way to find their own practitioner to work with. And honestly, it's why I run a membership, a health online membership for females. And it's one of the reasons I set it up, because, even seeing someone one-to-one like myself can be costly for some people. Whereas when you have an environment where you can go on and access videos on thyroid function or sleep or healthy hormone series, it really helps women just to understand the information that can be so useful in guiding yourself to, right, now I know that my sleep is affecting my hormones, or I know that my estrogen levels are affecting my thyroid function. It just helps you to start to understand this amazing body that we inhabit and how we can take a bit more control over those small daily habits that make such a big difference.
By the way, they do. Those little steps turn into big steps, right? So if I took 20 little steps, right, that I didn't even recognize, at the end of the day, I've got 20 steps. But it seems so hard when you think about the big steps, right? I have to get here, but I'm way down here. Yes. Everyone gets there the same way, one step at a time. So just focus on that first step. If that's reaching out for help, if that's joining a membership where you can get more advice on what to do. I will tell you that the weirdest thing for me is that in medical school, when I was sick, my oldest daughter and youngest daughter were in med school. And when I went to them for help, and my husband's a doctor, when I went to them for help, they're like, we only spend a semester in nutrition. And when we're in that semester, it's mostly teaching us how drugs interact with food. So like, the grapefruit, don't do grapefruit if you're doing statins. Like, how does drugs interact with my food? And it really isn't how food nourishes the body. It supports the body, gives the body what it needs to heal. And so I think that's crazy that they don't do that. I get it. When you're in med school, you've got to learn everything. You got to know all the things. So I get that they've done that, but it seems so sad when it's such a key part to your health and wellness.
100% agree with you, Jana. And really, when we look at the epidemic levels of obesity and chronic illnesses driven by inflammation, and we know categorically those are driven by lifestyle and dietary choices. So it makes so much sense to take a step back and go, okay, rather than trying to pick people up at the bottom of the cliff, how do we stop them falling off the cliff? And that really comes back to giving people the information, really helping them understand why they crave certain foods, why when we're consuming lots of junk food and processed food, how that interacts, how that disrupts the neurons within our gut. And that stops these satiety hormones being produced. It causes leptin resistance, and all these metabolic hormones become disrupted. And if people really start to understand the consequences of the certain foods they're choosing, it can help them to understand why they're experiencing the cravings they're having, why it's not down to a lack of willpower, but actually it's their genetic requirements that are being played with, and it's that kind of caveman inside that's screaming out for nutrients, and we're really not living congruently to our genes. As people start to understand, look, it's not you, it's just the environment you live in, the food environment you're exposed to, and we need to really start making those small steps to help your body to live within this food environment that's not particularly normal for our genetic requirements. So as that happens through this step-by-step process, people just start to flourish. The weight starts to come off, which I know is not a major focus. It's certainly not for me. It's a byproduct of becoming healthier. But I know a great deal of the women I work with feel really down about themselves when they're carrying weight that they just can't seem to get rid of.
I think that's a perfect place to end this, but I definitely want people to know how to reach you. So can you tell them where they can connect with you?
Of course, they can find me on Instagram. I'm at Pauline J. Cox on Instagram. I have a Facebook group called Healthy Keto Diet and Lifestyle. It's a free Facebook group where I share lots of blogs and information on food posts and just talks and things I've been doing. And then I have a membership, and the membership is My Health Mastery. And you can find that landing page, and all the information is about on the membership is on that page. And then I have a website, which is Sew and Arrow. It's like bow and arrow with an S in front. And that will, again, I have lots of information about courses, membership, and blogs I write on there as well.
She does. You're going to love it. And we're going to put all of that in the show notes. You can easily connect with Pauline. Pauline, thank you so much for being here today.
You're very welcome, Jana. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.